The Grand Metropolitan Opera House, a building breathing history and hushed melodies, often felt emptier at night. Its ornate velvet seats and gilded balconies, silent under the moon, were Daniel's kingdom. He was a single dad, just turned 35, with kind eyes and a strong jawline that even a janitor's uniform couldn't hide. Every evening, as the last patrons left and the lights dimmed, Daniel would begin his shift, pushing his cart through the vast halls, mopping floors that had seen countless famous feet. His work was solitary, often thankless. During the day, when the opera house buzzed with rehearsals and meetings, Daniel was almost invisible. But at galas, when the wealthy donors and polished executives swept through, his presence became a small, irritating smudge on their perfect evening. He'd hear their whispers, sometimes not so hushed. Isn't that the janitor? Always lurking. Or, he really should try to blend in more. They saw a mop and a bucket, not the man behind them. They certainly didn't see the handsome face hidden under a tired frown, or the gentle strength in his hands. Daniel, however, mostly ignored them. His focus was on his daughter, Lily, who was 8 years old and the sun in his world. He worked these night shifts because it meant he could be there for her after school, help with homework, and tuck her into bed. The opera house, for all its beauty and the scorn it sometimes brought, was simply a means to an end, a way to provide for Lily. He'd often pause in the main auditorium, the scent of old wood and dust filling his lungs, and imagine what it would be like to sit in one of those plush seats just for one night without a mop nearby. He longed for music to fill the silence, but his hands were busy with cleaning, not creating. The echoes of past performances sometimes seemed to mock him, reminding him of a life he had once known, a life of different strings. Tonight, however, was different. It was the annual Autumn Gala, the biggest event of the year, meant to raise money for the opera house. The air shimmered with expensive perfumes and the clinking of champagne glasses. Daniel, usually hidden in the shadows, was tasked with keeping the main lobby spotless as guests arrived. He moved like a ghost, emptying overflowing bins and wiping up spills, trying his best to be truly invisible. The laughter and chatter of the finely dressed crowd washed over him, a familiar wave of indifference. Suddenly, a hush fell over the crowd, followed by an urgent buzz. A woman in a sparkling gown, her face tight with worry, rushed past Daniel, muttering into a tiny headset. "He's stuck in traffic? The soloist? Impossible! The program starts in 5 minutes." Panic began to ripple through the velvet-roped VIP area. The grand opening act, a celebrated violinist, was nowhere to be found. Mr. Harrison, the opera house's stern director, his face red with anger, barked orders into his phone. "Find anyone! A substitute! We cannot start late!" The elegant music director, a woman named Clara with striking auburn hair and worried green eyes, stood beside him, trying to keep calm. "We've called everyone, Mr. Harrison. No one can get here in time. Not a single professional violinist is available on such short notice." The grand stage, usually a place of vibrant life, now stood empty, bathed in an expectant, yet now awkward silence. The murmurs grew louder. Donors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The entire gala, months in the making, was about to fall apart before it even began. Daniel watched from the edge of the room, a mop bucket at his feet, feeling the rising tension. He saw Clara's desperate gaze sweep across the room, searching, hoping for a miracle. As Clara's eyes swept the room, they snagged on Daniel. He was standing near the back, his janitor's uniform a stark contrast to the glittering crowd. For a fleeting moment, she thought she saw something in his posture, a quiet intensity that didn't fit a man whose main job was scrubbing floors. She remembered seeing him once, late at night, humming a complex melody as he polished a railing. It was a long shot, a desperate, wild idea. "You!" Clara called out, her voice cutting through the rising din. Daniel blinked, surprised, and pointed to himself. "Me?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Yes, you!" she insisted, rushing towards him. "Can you play the violin?" Daniel hesitated, his gaze falling to his hands, calloused from work. I used to," he admitted, his voice low. Mr. Harrison, overhearing, scoffed loudly. "A janitor? Don't be ridiculous, Miss Clara. We need a professional! But Clara was already pulling Daniel by the arm, her urgency overriding any doubts. It's our only chance, Mr. Harrison. We have no one else. Before Daniel could truly protest, he was being steered toward the stage entrance. His heart hammered against his ribs. He hadn't touched a violin in years. The stage lights felt blinding, the silence of the crowd now heavy with expectation. A stagehand, acting quickly, handed him a beautiful, gleaming violin from its velvet case, along with a bow. Daniel's hands, so accustomed to gripping mops and brushes, now carefully took hold of the instrument. A collective gasp rippled through the audience. Whispers broke out like wildfire. Is that the janitor? What on earth is happening? Mr. Harrison buried his face in his hands. Daniel adjusted the violin to his shoulder, the smooth wood feeling both foreign and familiar. He took a deep breath, the smell of rosin suddenly bringing back a flood of memories. He looked out at the sea of bewildered faces, then down at the violin, a lifeline offered in a moment of utter chaos. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, letting the weight of the violin settle. He thought of Lily, her bright smile, her unwavering belief in him. Then he lifted the bow. The first note, a clear, pure sound, cut through the murmuring crowd like a beam of light. It was hesitant at first, a single thread of melody, but then it grew, gaining strength and confidence. He began to play the opening piece, a challenging classical work. The audience who, moments before, had been whispering in disbelief, fell into a stunned silence. Their expressions, once full of confusion and scorn, slowly shifted to awe. Daniel's fingers, despite years away from the instrument, moved with an effortless grace, dancing across the strings. The music poured from the violin, rich and full, filling every corner of the vast opera house. It wasn't just technically perfect, it was soulful, carrying a deep emotion that touched every listener. Each note vibrated with a hidden story, a forgotten passion, a quiet strength. Clara, standing backstage, watched with wide eyes. She had gambled, and Daniel was delivering a masterpiece. Mr. Harrison, who had been fuming, now stood frozen, his mouth slightly agape. The donors, the executives, the very people who had mocked Daniel were now completely captivated. They leaned forward, mesmerized by the unexpected brilliance unfolding before them. When the final soaring note faded into the air, a profound silence hung over the room. For a long moment, no one moved, no one spoke. Then, slowly, a single clap echoed from the back of the auditorium. Another followed, then another, until a wave of applause erupted, rising like a crescendo. It was a standing ovation, slow to start, but powerful and genuine, filling the opera house with thunderous appreciation. Daniel, still holding the violin, looked out at the cheering crowd, a mix of relief and a strange, unfamiliar joy washing over him. He had not just played music, he had rediscovered a part of himself. The applause finally softened, though a buzz of excitement still filled the air. Clara, her face glowing with admiration, stepped onto the stage. She placed a hand gently on Daniel's arm. "That was magnificent, Daniel," she whispered, then turned to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've just witnessed something truly special. Our deepest thanks to Daniel, who stepped in at a moment's notice to save our gala." She paused, then added, "Many of you may know Daniel as part of our night staff. What you didn't know is that he is, in fact, a conservatory-trained violinist." More gas rippled through the audience. Mr. Harrison, still recovering from his shock, looked as if he might faint. Clara then turned to Daniel, offering him the microphone. He took it, his hand trembling slightly. The warmth of the violin still lingered in his fingers. He looked out at the faces, some still wide with surprise, others now showing curiosity, even respect. "Thank you," Daniel began, his voice a little hoarse but steady. I appreciate your kind words." He took a deep breath. "Many years ago, I dreamed of being a professional musician. I trained for it, but life, as it often does, had other plans." His gaze softened, a hint of sadness in his eyes. "My wife, Lily's mother, passed away shortly after our daughter was born. I suddenly found myself a single father." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. Raising Lily, giving her everything she needed, became my first priority. A musician's life, with its travel and uncertain income, wasn't practical anymore. He looked directly at the donors and executives in the front rows, the ones who had often dismissed him. So, I took a job that allowed me to be home during the day, a steady job that paid the bills and let me raise my daughter. This opera house, it allowed me to do that. A profound silence fell once more, different from the awe of his playing. This was a silence of understanding, of dawning realization. The janitor they had scorned was not a failed man, but a devoted father who had made a loving sacrifice. As Daniel stepped off the stage, a buzz of sympathetic murmurs and quiet admiration followed him. The gala resumed, but the mood had shifted, softened by Daniel's heartfelt confession. However, behind the scenes, a different kind of tension was brewing. Mr. Harrison, still red-faced, pulled Daniel and Clara into a secluded office backstage. Several board members, their expressions grim, were already waiting. This is an absolute disaster for our image! One board member, a woman with tight lips and even tighter pearls, exclaimed, "Our janitor, playing on stage? What will the press say? Metropolitan Opera's new star, the Mop Man!" Mr. Harrison, trying to regain control, cleared his throat. "Daniel, while we appreciate you stepping in, this complicates things. We can't have a janitor performing regularly. It's simply not appropriate for a world-class institution." Clara stepped forward, her green eyes flashing. "Not appropriate?" He saved the entire evening. He's a phenomenal talent, Mr. Harrison. His story, his sacrifice, it resonates with people. It's not bad optics. It's human. "Humanity doesn't pay the bills, Miss Rossi," another board member interjected coldly. "We need prestige, not charity cases. What kind of message does it send to our donors if our staff is performing?" Daniel, who had remained quiet, finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. "I understand your concerns. I simply helped out. I never asked for anything more." "But now that everyone knows," Mr. Harrison paced, wringing his hands, "we have a public relations nightmare on our hands. A former musician reduced to cleaning our floors? It makes us look bad." The argument escalated, voices rising. The board members seemed more worried about how Daniel's story reflected on them than about the incredible talent he possessed or the touching reason he had given up his career. It was a stark reminder of the divide between his world and theirs, a public confrontation over his very presence in their esteemed institution. As the argument grew louder, Daniel felt a familiar weariness settle over him. He was tired of being judged, tired of the invisible wall between him and people like these board members. Just as he was about to say he would simply go back to his cleaning duties, Clara stepped forward, placing a hand on his arm again. Her touch was gentle, reassuring. She turned to the board, her voice calm but firm. "With all due respect," Clara began, her auburn hair catching the light as she spoke, "Daniel is a gifted musician, and more importantly, a man of incredible integrity. He chose family over fame, and that is something to be admired, not hidden." She looked at Daniel, her green eyes full of warmth and understanding. "His performance tonight wasn't a disaster. It was a moment of pure magic, a reminder of why we love music in the first place." Clara, a respected music director in her own right, was also in her mid-30s, and her passion for the arts shone brightly. She had always believed that true talent should be celebrated, no matter where it came from. In Daniel, she saw not just a brilliant violinist, but a humble, devoted father whose sacrifice had touched her deeply. His quiet strength, his handsome face now softened by vulnerability, and the raw emotion in his music had truly moved her. "I believe," Clara continued, addressing the board directly, "that Daniel represents a powerful story, a story of dedication, of artistry, and of the profound choices we make for those we love. This isn't a problem, it's an opportunity. An opportunity to show the heart of this opera house, to connect with our audience on a deeper level." Her words, spoken with conviction, seemed to cut through the board members' worries, if only for a moment. Daniel looked at Clara, truly seeing her for the first time. Beyond her beauty and professional skill, he recognized a rare kindness, a kindred spirit who understood the deeper meaning of music and life. A spark, quiet but unmistakable, ignited between them, a shared respect that hinted at something more. Clara's impassioned defense, combined with the lingering awe from Daniel's performance, shifted the tide. The board, realizing the public sentiment was leaning heavily towards Daniel, reluctantly agreed to a compromise. Daniel would not return to janitorial duties. Instead, Clara, with a determined glint in her eye, proposed a temporary position for him as a resident artist, an ambassador of music, to play at special events and community outreach programs. It wasn't the main stage, but it was a beginning. A few weeks later, Daniel stood backstage again, but this time, the butterflies in his stomach were different. Tonight, he was playing a small, intimate concert for local school children and their families, part of the Opera House's new community initiative. And in the front row, a bright-eyed 8-year-old girl bounced with excitement. It was Lily. She had never seen her father play before, only heard his quiet humming around the house. When Daniel walked onto the stage, dressed in simple but smart clothes, a hush fell over the children. He lifted his violin, the same one he had played at the gala, and a soft, warm melody filled the room. Lily's eyes grew wide, sparkling with pure joy and wonder. She watched every movement of his bow, every gentle press of his fingers. This wasn't the tired dad who cleaned floors. This was a magician, weaving beautiful sounds from wood and strings. For Daniel, playing for Lily was different from playing for the gala crowd. Each note was a message to her, a story of his heart. The music flowed effortlessly, a part of him reawakened. He saw her proud smile, her tiny hands clapping softly in rhythm, and felt a profound sense of rightness. The violin strings felt like lifelines, connecting him to his past, to his present, and to the bright future he was building for them both. The music was no longer a forgotten dream, but a vibrant, living part of who he was, given new breath by his daughter's love. Over the next few months, Daniel's role at the Opera House grew. He performed at more community events, his story becoming an inspiration. His talent shone brightly, and the initial reluctance of the board faded as positive press and public goodwill poured in. Clara was often by his side, not just as a colleague, but as a true friend. Their shared love for music and their similar values brought them closer. Dinners after late rehearsals turned into conversations about their lives, their dreams, and eventually their deepening feelings for each other. Clara adored Lily, and Lily in turn blossomed under their combined warmth and attention. One crisp autumn evening, a year after the gala, Daniel stood on the grand stage of the Metropolitan Opera House once more. This time, he wasn't wearing a janitor's uniform, nor was he filling in for a missing artist. He was the featured soloist for a special benefit concert, his name proudly displayed in the program. Backstage, Clara, now more than just a music director, squeezed his hand, her smile full of pride and affection. As he walked out, the lights illuminated a familiar face in the front row. Lily, now 9, sat beside Clara, her eyes shining with pure joy. She held a small handmade sign that read, "Go Dad." Daniel smiled, a full, happy smile that reached his eyes. He raised his violin, its polished wood reflecting the stage lights. As the bow touched the strings, a rich, vibrant melody filled the hall, a testament to resilience, love, and the power of second chances. Each note was a thread, weaving together his past, his present with Clara, and the bright future with Lily. The music was a lifeline, bringing him back to himself, to his passion, and to the beautiful new life he had built. Lily clapped loudest of all, her small cheers echoing in her father's happy heart. His music had found its way home, and so had Daniel.